Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. Please rise and sing with us, Spirit of Life.
Good morning. I'm Richard Steele, today's lay leader. I welcome all to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane, including those of you who are here with us in person in the sanctuary, remote attendees who have connected via our streaming feed to watch the service, and those who are using Zoom to participate interactively from locations around North America and beyond. We are happy that each of you is here. Today, we welcome a panel organized by local members of the national organization Jewish Voice for Peace, or JVP for short. During this service, our presenters will be Morton Alexander, who is the contact person for the local chapter and overall panel organizer, followed by speakers Carlos Laurent and Emily Fletcher, sitting in the first row. The national entity Jewish Voice for Peace was founded in 1996 in Berkeley, California, as an American Jewish advocacy group critical of colonial settler Zionism and of Israelis' occupation of Palestinian territories, and also supportive of the Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions, or BDS, campaign, in hopes of changing current Israeli policies for the better. Today's presentations will reference, among other things, current recent developments in the U.S. and in the Middle East, responses to critiques of Israeli administration policies, and ways that Spokane residents can get involved in working for peace in the Middle East. And following this service, there will be a discussion, which is being organized by our churches, the UUCS's churches, Social Justice Coordinating Council, on the topic of becoming a non-apartheid congregation. This is a national campaign that is organized, among others, by UUs for Justice in the Middle East. And there will be, at our annual congregational meeting in June, a resolution on which will be discussed and voted on to this end, whether or not to become a non-apartheid congregation. So I encourage all of you to participate in that, and the plan is to meet, to grab a cup of coffee and meet in the Potter Room in the Religious Education Wing following the service. Please join me in giving a very warm welcome to all of our panel discussants today. Whether you're in our sanctuary today or watching from afar, it is here that we join to create a nourishing religious home with a mission to champion justice, diversity, and environmental stewardship in the wider world, or as we say more concisely, to create community, find meaning, and work for justice, or live justly. Now, please take a few minutes to greet one another and become acquainted. We turn now from our informal greetings to formally begin our service by lighting our chalice, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism, of our unity and solidarity, of our openness and inclusion, of our community and individuality. May this small flame be an offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in the world and a beacon of hope to those in need. And may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost, and cast a healthy shadow of doubt where it has been found. For our opening reflection, I want to offer some historical perspective on matters under discussion today. And for this, I turn to the words of the late Professor Tony Judt, Cambridge-educated historian of Jewish descent, founder and inaugural president of the Erich Maria Remarque Institute of European Affairs at New York University, and co-author with Timothy Snyder of the remarkable 2012 book, dictated extemporaneously while Judt was paralyzed, fully paralyzed with ALS, book entitled Thinking the 20th Century. His words. One of the great confusions in the history of Zionism, as perceived in retrospect, is the failure to see the huge tensions between the Zionist thinkers and other radicals who emerged from the Russian Empire and those whose roots lay in Central or Western Europe. This tension goes beyond questions of what sort of country they were setting out to invent. It speaks to very different attitudes towards their critics and opponents. Radicals from the Russian Empire, Jewish or otherwise, could rarely see the point of compromise. From this point of view of early Russian or Polish Zionists, marinated in the uncompromising narrative of the tragic past, history was always and only a narrative of conflict, and a narrative in which the winner takes all. Conversely, the Central Europeans could at least imagine a liberal view of history, again, as the story of progress in which everyone can find a place, where progress itself ensures space and autonomy for all. This unmistakably Viennese way of thinking was, from the outset, dismissed by the clear-headed radical Russians like Vladimir Jabotinsky as mere flannel. What the Jews were seeking in Palestine, he used to say, was not progress but a state. When you build a state, you make a revolution. And in a revolution, there can only ever be winners and losers. This time around, we Jews are going to be the winners. Judt goes on to observe, it was the Russian tradition, in this case the Jabotinsky's revisionist Zionism, of a tradition of reactionary revolution that was to prevail. Today, it is the heirs of Jabotinsky's revisionist Zionists who govern and dominate Israel, not the rather uncomfortable blend of left Russian utopianism and Central European liberalism that governed the country for its first 3 decades.
Please sing with us. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child.
Sometimes I feel like a motherless child.
Each time we gather as a congregation, there are always those who are with us in our hearts and minds and whom we want to wrap in our love and care. We light a candle for them this morning. We light a candle for the people of Ukraine who are fighting and dying to protect their homeland against the Russian war of aggression. And we mourn all the innocent victims of violence in the Mideast, whether in the Gaza Strip, across the West Bank, in the Israeli state, in Lebanon, in Syria, or beyond. We also hold in our thoughts all the victims of weather disasters, floods, fires, killing heat caused by climate change the world over. Let us share a moment in silence, embracing others who are here in our hearts. You are welcome to say their names, those named aloud and those remembered in the silence we hold in our community of compassion. We now gratefully give and receive this morning's offering, which sustains this community and its mission to the larger world.
I'm going to be performing a piece called Peat Bog Soldiers. It was written in the Nazi concentration camp called Bergamo, and it was written by political dissidents who were imprisoned there, and the lyrics, which I won't be doing, but you can look them up later, reflect the torturous, harsh conditions that they were kept in.
Thank you, Jackie. I would like to invite any children to come up front now for our Time for All Ages. This morning I'll be sharing an adaptation of one of Aesop's very old fables. Once upon a time, an old woman lived on a beautiful farm in the country. From her window, she could see pasture land, fields of grain, barns filled with animals, orchards, and forests beyond. The farm was special to the old woman because it had been in her family for many generations. She had lived there her whole life and grew up to be a mother and raised her family of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's say 8 children. Now her husband had died, and she too was in the last days of her life. The old woman should have been content after such a fortunate life, but she wasn't. She lay on her bed worrying about her grown children. They could not seem to get along. She heard them quarreling day and night, even though some of them were good at farming, and some working with animals, some at carpentry, others at cooking or preserving the food they grew. They each thought their job was the most important and that the others didn't work hard enough. They were all grown-ups, but they held grudges against each other from things in their past, and they were jealous of each other's good fortunes. The old woman tried talking to her children about living in peace, but they seemed to grow increasingly bitter day by day. She felt sure that they would not be able to keep the family farm after she had died because they could not work together or appreciate each other's gifts. Then one day, as she grew weaker, she had an idea. She called her children to her bedside. "I have one last favor to ask of you," she said. "I would like each of you to go to the forest and find 2 sticks. Bring them here tomorrow, and I'll explain." So the children did as she asked, and came to her room the next day with 2 sticks each. "Thank you, children," the old woman said. "Please put one of your sticks down, and see if you can break the other one in half." The children easily broke their sticks in half. And then the old woman asked the children to pass her the remaining whole sticks. "Let's gather the remaining sticks into a bundle," she said. Then the old woman passed the bundle back to the children and said, "Please, pass this bundle amongst yourselves, and tell me, is it easy to break the bundle?" The children passed the bundle, but none of them could break it. "You, my children, are like these sticks," the old woman said. "If you go your separate ways, quarreling and holding resentments towards one another, you will each be alone. The difficulties of life will hurt you. But if you work together, appreciate one another's gifts, cherish what you share in common, and care for each other, you'll be strong like the bundle, and nothing in life can break you. Find strength and joy in one another's company, and you will live well and accomplish so much." The children took their mother's lesson to heart, letting go of past grudges, focusing on what they shared in common, appreciating each other's strengths, and working together. The old woman died peacefully, and the farm remained in her family for many, many generations. And now please join me in singing the children to Children's Chapel, where we'll experiment with some sticks.
As we prepare for meditation, I invite you to find a comfortable position. Relax, breathe deeply, and reflect on the words of Rashid Khalidi, the Edward Said Professor of Modern Arab Studies at Columbia University, from his book, The 100 Years' War on Palestine, A History of Settler Colonialism and Resistance, 1917 through 2017. Settler colonial confrontations with indigenous peoples have only ended in one of 3 ways: with the elimination or full subjugation of the native population, as in North America, with the defeat and expulsion of the colonizer, as in Algeria, which is extremely rare, or with the abandonment of colonial supremacy in the context of compromise and reconciliation, as in South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Ireland.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one. We'll be as one. Imagine no possessions, or if you can, no need for greed or hunger, a brotherhood of men. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one. Be as one.
Thanks. Great song. First, I'd like to acknowledge our treasurer here, Jennifer Calvert. I was born in Brooklyn 3 years before the creation of Israel and raised as an Orthodox Jew. The Zionist takeover of Jewish culture eventually split our family. The growth of Jewish Voice for Peace shows that there is not total solidarity with Israel. While some Jewish students feel offended by campus protests, the protesters themselves, as at UCLA, experience expulsion, arrest, and violence. Protest is age-appropriate behavior. Adlai Stevenson, former U.S. ambassador to the UN, said that such arrests would later be seen as a badge of courage. In 1964, I was arrested in a Manhattan civil rights protest. The crime that Jesus was arrested and punished for was blasphemy. Most of my fellow Jews in Spokane's 3 congregations, as well as many American voters, both parties, considered JVP's views as religious and political blasphemy. Criticism of Israel is not anti-Semitic, nor is comparing its crimes to those of Nazi Germany. But both of these doctrines are part of the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. The adoption of these definitions by schools and governments is a scam meant to stifle intellectual freedom and excuse aggression. Such forbidden speech and thought is the new heresy now enforced by many public and private institutions, the basis of the current campus oppression. So we have a situation in which the regime says that they must take away our rights in order to protect the Jews. That doesn't sound good. Biden, Harris, Trump, and Netanyahu wrap themselves in the flags of their nations to defend the slaughter. But the IHRA wraps itself in the shrouds of the Holocaust victims they desecrate in order to do the same. We have a sad example of this academic scandal right here in River City. Spokane JVP recently sent a letter to the president of Gonzaga University in defense of our friend, Dr. Andrea Brower, a sociology professor under investigation for violation of Title VI of the Civil Rights Code and currently on extended medical leave. Here are some excerpts from the letter to Gonzaga, and that's the rest of my statement is from that letter. While many congregations promote a pro-Israel line, others are divided or explicitly disidentify from Israel or from war. There are possibly just as many Jewish people who think independently of Zionism as those who don't, many of whom do not attend synagogues. Jewishness is more than a set of religious practices. There is no Jewish pope who speaks for all of us. What is one to do with the awareness of genocide other than to condemn, protest, and oppose it? It is the obligation of all people of conscience, especially Jews, who have survived genocide ourselves and in whose name Israel falsely claims to act. and of students and their teachers, and certainly one who was hired to teach social justice and model activism like Dr. Brower, hired as, quote, an activist scholar. We have seen the president be inaugurated accompanied by Nazi salutes. For the Gonzaga administration to yield to Trump's demands would be to ignore the historically right-wing anti-Semitism in our region and the anti-Semitism of many in the Trump administration. The ongoing investigation of Dr. Brower plays into these trends and makes our community less, not more, safe. We ask you to drop the investigation of Dr. Brower for the following reasons. Attacks on Palestinians and immigrants are a trial balloon practice for more widespread authoritarian attacks on free speech. The ability to fire professors, expel students, and deport legal residents who stand up for Palestinian rights is a threat to Jews too. It never goes well for us, either when people can be targeted, exiled, or confined for expressing political views. Gonzaga is a Catholic and Jesuit institution, although your mission statement includes a commitment to social justice. We keep hearing about attempts to shut down speakers and protests. This is inconsistent with your mission. Rather than defining anti-Semitism for us and silencing faculty or students, we invite you to welcome all views and recognize that the Jewish community is not the same as Israel and has a diversity of opinions. Thanks.
Hello. It's always a hard act to follow Morton, but I'll try. I'm here to talk about the difference between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. I think this is a very important distinction to make, and one that is especially important to make today. Morton mentioned the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, which is something that is coming to replace the previous understanding of anti-Semitism in legal and other institutional contexts. So the main difference that this new definition is introducing into the concept of anti-Semitism is the idea that it is anti-Semitic to criticize the state of Israel for, and I believe it says, for something it has not done, basically ascribing actions to the state of Israel that they have not done. Well, what's the problem with that? The problem is that if you happen to disagree with what a state says it's doing, now you're getting into a sort of a he said, she said situation with a state actor. So if an atrocity is committed, if there's an airstrike and 40 Palestinians are killed, but the Israeli government doesn't believe that that is what happens or says that that is not what happened, suddenly you could be considered anti-Semitic for following reputable news sources instead of listening to what a self-interested state says about its own atrocities. So that could label you as anti-Semitic. I think that this is a terrible thing. But I think it's also important to think about who this benefits and who this harms. So, two groups that this benefits. One, clearly the state of Israel. Gives them cover to do things that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to get away with in the court of public opinion. And secondly, it benefits anti-Semites, because all of a sudden you've taken the barrier to entry for being labeled an anti-Semite and brought it down to the floor. So now it's not as exclusive a club as it used to be. The club of people being targeted as anti-Semitic, or being labeled as anti-Semitic. So that's great. They're trying to build a big tent. We can't let them do that. So who does this harm? First of all, this harms dissidents. I think anybody who wishes to speak against the actions of a state should be allowed to do so without being unfairly labeled an anti-Semite. But this is going to make it much more difficult for people to speak out in institutional contexts such as the academy and anybody who has a public-facing role. But this also potentially harms Jews, because what it does is it creates an association, an artificial association between the state of Israel, which again is a state actor with its own interests, and the Jewish people, who, as Morton has said, do not have a pope, do not have a set of beliefs that we all ascribe to, and are as diverse as any group in terms of political opinions and also in terms of walks of life. So I want to just leave this discussion with just mentioning my grandmother, who spent the war as a child, World War II, as a child in Italy on the run from the Nazis, and she came back to the United States and has been a fervent anti-Zionist ever since. She thinks it's important to instill in her children and grandchildren the idea that a genocide that is happening to any people is something that Jews need to take a stand against. It's not in our name. Never again does not mean never again to the Jews. It means never again to anybody. So I would like to leave you with that.
Hello, everyone. My name is Emily Fletcher, and I'm here to give you all a brief overview on the Boycott, Divest, Sanctions movement. It's basically a call to action because my other two speakers gave some serious topics, and the biggest question is, what do we do about it? This is one of the most general things we can do. So, and also apartheid-free zones in preparation for the discussion that'll be happening later today at 12 or 12:30, and the vote that's taking place later in June. So, what is BDS? BDS stands for Boycott, Divest, Sanction. It is a movement from the Palestinian civil society that was started in 2005. They basically call the whole world, everybody, to boycott and divest key targets and sanction key targets that are heavily involved in Israelis' apartheid system and their colonial project and other international crimes. So the next slide, please. So I will go a bit more on the definitions and then what their focus is, possible pushback, and then I'll go over some key resources. And next slide. So this slide was not made, I didn't know how big the screen was. So again, if anyone's interested in the slideshow, I can share it or go to whoever runs the website and post it there. But on the left, it talks more specifically on the boycott, divest, sanction movement. And then on the right, it'll go more into the apartheid-free zone. So what is an apartheid-free zone? It is an extension of the call to action of boycott, divest, sanction. Basically, a social group, a business, or an organization will aspire to abide by the Palestinian Civil Society's Code of Conduct, which you can find on their website. Basically, it's saying, don't be racist, don't be rude, don't be chill, just be chill in general. But then a public announcement saying that you will endeavor to boycott and divest from all the key targets and to sanction other key targets. And then voila, you are an apartheid-free zone. Most of them will have like an identifier as well as this publication stating themselves as an apartheid-free zone. And then many groups will choose to push their focus further into other intersectional movements that is heavily encouraged by the Palestinian civil society. Like, are you pro-union? Is there equality amongst genders? Is our community, are there other like colonial projects against Native Americans that we can be a part of? Very, intersectional causes. This affects everyone. So the next slide, please. Now, I've mentioned targets. What does that mean? Well, since its creation, Israel and America has been deeply intertwined. And you can't boycott everything that has to do with Israel because that is nearly everything. Especially when you consider like the nitty-gritty, like you can't boycott a car engine that has this specific cable manufactured in Israel, That's just not feasible. So the boycott, divest, sanction movement has this method. In the top left corner, you see like a bunch of scattered dots. That is just a general boycott. It's messy, it's disorganized. But if you see the left, a bunch of dots centering on the same target, it becomes more effective. It has a bigger noticeable impact. Not only does the boycott efforts become more noticeable, but in selecting key targets that have the biggest involvement in the colonial state of Israel, then it'll have the biggest impact in that effort as well. Because, why boycott? The biggest change, unfortunately, is affected through the wallet, as we've seen through the apartheid South Africa. So basically, if we want them to listen, we got to hit them where it hurts, which is the dollar. On the right side of the screen has most of the identified key targets. There are 4 different types of methods under this system. The first one is general boycott, which, for example, you will see the Chevron, Texaco, Techron, AVA, Adidas, Reebok, and Xbox. Basically, these companies have huge investments in the Israeli apartheid system and are either that or are involved in the current settler movements. There's also, divestments also involves Disney Plus, Remax, Simons, and Dell. Basically, if you have any investments as a business or as a community to withdraw your money because they also are heavily invested in the state of Israel, whether through money or military intelligence support. Each company has a different involvement that I don't have time to go over. Again, all this information is from the BDS movement website, which you can find everything in more depth. Now, in the other bottom right corner is called the grassroots boycott. It means it is not initiated by the Palestinian civil society, but they do give their support. And examples of that is McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Burger King, Wix, Pizza Hut, and Papa John's. And then, of course, there's also a call to action to put pressure on certain companies in addition to boycotts to also do protest. And that is stuff like Amazon, Airbnb, and Diva and Booking.com. If you need like a guide to know what to boycott, the app Boycott is an official partner of the BDS movement. And all you need to do is to scan a barcode and it'll tell you if it's heavily an apartheid target or not. And since it has that official support, it'll also help recommend alternatives And they also give information on like what's going on, why they're boycotting certain things in their Instagram posts. So that is just as crucial of a tool. Next slide, please. So in preparation for this speech, I've been asked, like, what are the risks of becoming an apartheid state? And I guess it would be safe to say that Washington is one of the safest states legal-wise at the moment. If you look at the map in the bottom right corner, that is the map of states that have legislation that makes it illegal to boycott Israel if you are a company or if you're in contract with any state or local government. You can't do it. An example of that is in the documentary called Boycott, where they talk about 3 people, a news runner, a teacher, and one more person, but they've decided they wanted to boycott against the Israeli state, and they had to be taken to court. And so to kind of understand that risk and that situation, I totally recommend watching that documentary because it's a good first-hand example. Now, the other risk is what my other speakers have discussed. They have worked really hard to correlate anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism. And we have already discussed that it is not the same. You can even do with simple numbers. If not all Zionists are Jews, and not all Jews are Zionists, how can they be the same? Unfortunately, with past history and efforts, our biggest concern in terms of pushback is the general public, because not everyone actually knows the difference. In the social time between the first and second congregation, I've been informed that there was a large and strong opposition when this church made an anti-apartheid statement, and while there is no legal consequence, some individuals got very verbally violent, very, very, very upfront and confrontational about it. So there is always the social risk, and that is something to be considered. Next slide, please. So last, I want to leave you all with some key resources. Again, everything that I mentioned is on the Boycott, Divest, Sanctions movement website. It has a toolkit on how to become an apartheid-free zone. They have an email where you can ask questions, basically, and it's, organized by the Palestinian people. So when you are joining a cause, it is best to listen to those directly affected on what they need. Now, on the top line, you see the Boycott app that I mentioned earlier. If for whatever reason it doesn't work for you, there's also the No Thanks app. It does the same thing, scan the barcode, tells you whether or not it's, an apartheid company. That one is developed by Palestinians. And then in the middle, there's an app called 5 Calls, because this is a huge intersectional movement. As we've seen in local news, it's not just, Palestinians affected by our imperialism, it's any immigrant, and it is spreading quickly. That's a lot of causes, and that's a lot of newsletters. So the 5 Calls app is what I like to use because it gathers a long list of various calls and causes, and then you can click on it and it gives you a script of something to help you talk to your senator. You can leave a message through that. It's a good way to help, an accessible way, so if you want to consistently leave messages at your representative, it's a good way to help. Now on the right, I forgot what it's called, and I didn't realize how far away the screen is, but I could always tell you later, but in all honesty, it is a legislation tracker, and that is very important right now. Especially because the aforementioned legislation that is correlating anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, it passed the House, and right now it's sitting in the Senate. But as of when I made this slideshow, it hasn't moved in a while. And that's the thing about legislation, is that it takes forever and it could pop back up at any time. So having a reliable legislation tracker, be it app or website, is crucial to know where to put your efforts. Like if the legislation pops back up, now's the time to call your representative. You may not want to bother them with it if it's not going to be voted on for a while. So that is also a key resource. So on the row below that is the sites, like the websites, like the Affirmation BDS website. There's also Code Pink and Don't Buy for Occupation. Those are two activist groups. Code Pink is global, and they have a lot of resources on how to organize, what to do, educational sources on various causes, mentorship, stuff like that, and general examples. So it is an excellent resource if you want to know, like, where do I begin? There is the Who Profits, Human Rights Watch websites. Human Rights Watch is a good newsletter because they keep track on various global conflicts, especially the conflict happening in Gaza and the West Bank, and they report and record human rights violations. And then the Who Profits one is a website where they do research and database, a whole collection of companies and their various levels of involvement in apartheid Israel. So if you are in a position to divest from, that's an excellent resource. And last, there's the apartheid-free website, .org over there. That is a social group for various people trying to form apartheid-free zones, because each city or state trying to become apartheid-free has a different political and social environment to navigate. And so it's an excellent chat resource to look at people who are more experienced in this effort, or people who are just looking for general advice to communicate with each other and build a community. Because that's really what an apartheid-free zone's main goal is not only to divest and to stop benefiting from Israel and their occupation. It is to build a community, because liberating one group of people is a stepping stone to liberating everyone. And if we all work together, we will have a more peaceful and successful community. And that is what we should all aspire to. So thank you for your time.
So we're going to sing This Little Light of Mine. Feel free to join us.
Great energy. I want to thank the speakers today for coming and presenting. Very informative, very useful, very empowering. Thank you. And I also want to point out that there's a table in the back with literature on the topics that were discussed, and links and QR codes and the rest, so feel free. And there will be a discussion following this, and it will be in the Potter Room, and it is going to be a discussion of our congregation. There will be a motion made at our congregational meeting for our congregation to become an anti-apartheid congregation. And so there will be an opportunity to discuss that, get questions asked and answered, and interact with others. So everybody welcome. Yeah, you grab some coffee and feel free. Anything else I should say, Jennifer? Okay, so we could get to the benediction. All righty. So, for our benediction, I offer the words of Nelson Mandela, anti-apartheid activist, first president of post-apartheid South Africa, and Nobel Peace Prize laureate. In the end, reconciliation is a spiritual process, which requires more than just a legal framework. It has to happen in the hearts and minds of people. Amen. Blessed be. Salam alaikum and shalom.